Welcome to Papa Kāinga or Home Learning TV. I'm Nathan Wallace. Today our message is learning happens everywhere, which is great news because there's sometimes a misconception that learning is really just about what happens at school and it's at a desk and your nose is down, and that is a type of learning, but learning is much wider than that. Remember yesterday we looked at the role of endorphins and how movement is actually intricately connected to learning. So endorphins play a role in helping to consolidate knowledge in your brain. Literally inside your brain when you learn something new, there's this little connection or a new neural pathway that's formed, a synaptic connection. So to consolidate that in your brain, the brain has to lay down this stuff called myelin. And basically it does that a whole lot better in the presence of endorphins. So that's just extending on what we talked about yesterday. And from another angle, endorphins help us to learn because they speed up the process of laying down myelination. You can think of it like a dirt track in comparison to a path that's got completely asphalted. This myelin stuff I'm talking about that consolidates knowledge is really like the asphalt, and so it makes the pathway permanent in your brain. You've got a permanent pathway or multiple pathways in your brain telling you how to tie your shoelaces. You don't have to learn that anew each time because you've done it so many times that you have a permanent pathway in the brain. That pathway, if you like, is being asphalted. So that asphalt goes down way faster, or myelin goes down way faster and way quicker in the presence of endorphins. So another way that endorphins really speeds up learning, and just more evidence that learning is not just what happens in the classroom, learning happens everywhere, movement is learning. If I was going to tell you the 3 R's of from a neuroscience perspective, what are the 3 R's of education, of children reaching their full potential? I'd say they are quite easy to choose. They are relationship. From a neurological point of view, your relationship and face-to-face interaction, or kanohi ki te kanohi, is one of the most complex things that your brain does. So next to genes, the biggest sort of environmental factor that's actually going to determine your child's overall outcomes is the quality of those relationships. So we've always got to focus on that first. But if I extend it out to another couple of R's, so we'll say the 5 R's of neuroscience education, because it's number 1's relationship, number 2's relationship, number 3's relationship. Number 4 could easily be reciprocity, which just means taking turns. It's really just to undo that idea that your child is an empty vessel and you've got to be putting in information. Suv is the capital of Fiji, that you're filling up an empty vessel. It's not that really. You've got to see the child as an active agent in their learning, as a little scientist if you like, and your job is to empower them to carry out their experiments, to empower them as a learner. And that means that the play is not all directed by the teacher or the parent, that it's reciprocal. Reciprocity. The other R I would choose then, the big word, is responsiveness. And responsiveness again builds on that idea, but it means that you don't direct the play necessarily. You don't direct the learning. You respond to the learning. The brain's really designed to pick up on responsiveness much more than direction. You see this right from the time children are little infants. When your child was really, 6 months old and they were going gaga and you said dad, 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 to try and actively teach them to say the word dad. Actually, how research informs us is that the baby who will learn to say, in this example, dad, earlier, is not the one that gets direct instruction from the parent saying, dad, 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 dad. Actually, the child that likely to say that quicker is the child that has a parent that right from the start imitated them. So when the baby went goo gaga, you said back, not dad, 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 but goo gaga. You imitated the baby. Then the child learns, oh, you're copying me. And then the baby starts copying you. And that's how they learn 90% of their language, through copying you. So it's actually that responsiveness of copying the baby's first sound, which accelerates language acquisition. So it's the same thing here really. When playing, you don't have to be in charge all the time. Respond to the child's ideas. Build on their ideas. So learning happens everywhere. We've looked at the 5 R's. What's the best way to facilitate all of those in the shortest possible and quickest, easiest way? And it's this magic word, play. Right? So play gets a bad press, really. People think play is something you do in between learning or something that you do before learning happens. But from a neuroscience point of view, play is like the method that higher mammals have evolved to facilitate the development of your higher intelligence. And we see this over and over again in longitudinal studies. It's not children whose play is interrupted and at 3 they're sat at a desk and taught colours and numbers and alphabet. In fact, over and over again, the research tells us that plateaus, those cognitive skills, colours, numbers, alphabet, for the vast majority of children, that plateaus by 8. So that means that whether your child learned to write their name at 4 or whether they didn't learn to write their name till 7.5, from 8 onwards no one can tell for the rest of their life. So it doesn't really make a huge difference. What does stay with them for the rest of their life and sets your child up to be a lifelong learner is play. Because play allows the child to develop what the literature calls dispositions. So dispositions is just a flash word for basically trying to describe how your child feels as a learner, or the skills that your child, the attitudes, the beliefs, the behaviours that your child brings towards learning. Maybe an example. You might think that the 4-year-old, it's good for them to spend their time sitting down, writing, getting ready to go to school. Whereas what I'm saying is whether they learn that at 4 or whether they learn that at 7, we can't really tell the difference after 8. But the child at 4 who is, say, building a dam in the river and is going to waste 3 hours building a dam in the river, let's look at what sort of dispositions or attitudes towards learning the child is learning there. Straight away, he's got autonomy in his learning. He's driving it. No one else is telling him what to do. He's deciding what to do. He's the scientist. He's the explorer. So he's got what we call autonomy in his learning, and he's driving his own learning. That's something he's going to need to do for the rest of his life. What other ways can you get a 4-year-old to focus their attention for 3 hours? He's probably not going to focus attention on the things you want him to do for 3 hours or learning to write his name, but he will focus on building a dam for 3 hours. So that's where you get sustained attention, through play. And why does he do that? Because he's passionate about that, because he chose it, because that's what he wanted to do. And it's actually, by letting him do that, we really set him up to be a lifelong learner and give him the best possible start. Well, he's also learning so much problem solving. Do you think he was able to dam the river successfully the very first time? No, he probably failed 99 times before he successfully dammed the river, so now we've got a child that's learning to persevere through 99 failures. I mean, this stuff's all gold. So I'm just trying to give you a snippet of understanding that we should really, really value play and extend our understanding of what play is. And so now, let's look at some ideas for these sort of children under 12 on ways that we can enhance their play while we're in lockdown. So in that way, responsive, reciprocal play is actually going to help your child's brain a lot. Play really helps with problem solving when you use a responsive approach, because it means that you're not jumping in and providing the answer for the child, but like I mentioned earlier, you're empowering them to follow that process yourself. So it's as simple as saying things like, oh, what's another way we could do that? Oh, well, okay, let's try that, regardless of whether you know the outcome's not going to work already. But yeah, responsive play means following the child's idea, and in that way they're able to come up with a hypothesis or a strategy about how they want to fix that problem, and you empower them to follow through on that strategy. Wonderful for their brain. In fact, in line with that, I'm often recommending to parents this thing called a mate date. And the reason I call it a mate date is because the rest of the time you're not so much your kid's mate, You tend to be the one that has to tell them to brush their teeth and to go to bed and to have a wash and to do their chores. You tend to be much more of a mate when you're an uncle or an auntie. So a mate date is a way of giving your own child that a little glimpse of what you're like as a cool uncle or auntie. And so there's 2 things to remember with a mate date. One is it has to be predictable. We've talked previously about how important predictability is to the brain. We talked about the scales in your head, and that if you, that survival's on one side of the scales and higher intelligence is on the other. If survival's way up here, we don't get to access our higher intelligence. And any time we're in an unpredictable environment, that's pretty much what's happening. So predictability calms that brainstem and allows you to move into the frontal cortex. So that's why it's really important that we make this predictable for the child. So having it at a set time. I mean, depending on the age of the child, that could be, if they can't tell the time, then it's not going to be relevant to say 2 o'clock, but it might be that we have it after your afternoon sleep and, just before whatever works for your family, but it has to be predictable to the child. They know when it's going to happen. So that's half of it, predictability. The other half is the fact that it's 100% responsive to your child. You don't get to be in charge then. This is the cool auntie, cool uncle part, because you're just going to do pretty much whatever that kid wants in that space of time. Now, they might waste it for a start and just not really believe you're going to actually be quiet for 5 minutes and let them be in charge and just, kind of do nothing, or say, I'm going to watch the TV while you're doing that. the idea is you actually let them do that. They're in charge of that time. The whole idea is you're not in charge. So if they've got you for 10 minutes and they know this is their time with you, if they choose to spend that watching TV, then sit down and watch whatever program it is that they're watching, because it must be very important to them. But the idea is, they might do that once or twice, but they'll soon work out, oh, you're actually committed to this idea. Like, you actually are going to sit down and follow and copy and do the ideas that I want. They'll often test you by about the third session by doing something like making you lie on your back, where they put a baby bottle in your mouth and feed you a bottle for 10 minutes. It's a way of taking the power back. The point is, what you're opening up is this responsive play, where the child actually realises they're an agent. You're not going to correct them. You're not, it means, short of damaging yourself, you're going to do whatever they want in that 10 minutes. If they want to play Monopoly and change the rules every single go to advantage them, they're allowed to, because it's their 10 minutes. All of the usual rules you have around, no, you must follow the rules, you must, all the musts are out, because cool aunties and cool uncles don't do the musts so much. So, not undervaluing how important your role is as a parent, I'm just saying, by creating a 5 or a 10 minute window every day where you actually make yourself fully available to your child, spiritually, emotionally, physically and mentally available, not with your cell phone, not distractions, not going to run away and do something else, not answering texts, but 100% full attention for that 10 minutes, that will do masses for your child's brain. So that's the power of responsive play. If you can only start that off for 5 minutes, start it off for 5 minutes. Extend it out the next time to 7 minutes, extend it out to 10 minutes. Just see how you go. It's not that difficult, and it really opens up a wonderland of opportunities for your child. For primary age children, a lot of the ideas we suggest this afternoon in the PM session to the teenagers, a lot of those will be applicable as well, so I'd encourage you to look for ideas there. But think about things like hut building, TikTok. The skills that a child is using coordination-wise for TikTok, the problem solving they've got to use for hut building, this is all really important learning as well. Just kicking a ball around the backyard involves so much coordination, understanding of spatial distances. Learning really does happen everywhere. Learning might look different for different developmental stages for younger children. They might all use the same object, but play will look different because they'll use it in different ways according to their developmental stage. So, we're all used to the fact that babies will mouth things a whole lot. So an infant, when they want to learn about something, take an ordinary container from the kitchen. A baby, might just want to put it in their mouth to get the taste of it. Taste is one of those early senses to be wired up, so the baby does learn a lot about the world through their sense of taste. They might just want to put it from one hand to the other hand, because that level of coordination and motor skill is big learning for a very, very young child. With the same object, an older child might go, a toddler might say, oh, well, what else can I do? What can I do with this? What can I do with this? So can I roll it along the floor? Can I shake it to get a noise and a beat going? And then an older child still, say a 4-year-old getting up there, might look at what are other creative ways I can use this, other than the purpose it was invented for. I might use it as a stepping stool, because now there's things I can reach that are much higher. I might use it as a diving board from which to dive off. Same object, but different uses at different developmental stages. Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time. Kia tau, kia manawa nui, kia rangamārie. Ka mihi nui kia koutou.